I'm a multiracial kid. So like everything that happens when you're a kid is kind of like, you're not quite sure if it's a dig or if it's something that,
Yep.
so they'd be like, Aaron, like really emphasize it. And I'd be like, nah, it's Aaron.
Yep.
Let's just clip
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Whereas I would get Erin deliberately because I
Yeah.
was an effeminate kid. So, and
Right.
also work with Americans on this show, and they've two of them have Midwestern accents. So
Mm.
every episode, it's, oh, hey, Erin.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, flatten it, Aaron, Aaron. It's flatten it down. Hello, darling. She's
Aw,
she's gonna.
puppies.
I don't know how she's gonna go. The one time I had her in a recording was the day after I got her, and she was in my lap during my introduction for Alison Fraser and Ben Rimmelauer. She got up, went around the back of the computer and poop, little puppy poop. And I
Ah.
am a professional, and I got through that remarkably. But at the end of it, I'm like, Alison Fraser and Ben Rimmelauer. Oh my god, the dog just shat. I'm so sorry. And that was how we opened the episode. So
Exactly.
the audience never knew. But anyways,
Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
g'day and welcome to an extra fuzzy edition of Thrash and Treasure, the Torture Chamber musical comedy podcast that's either full of knowledge or full of nonsense, depending on the day. And speaking of awful, I'm Aaron. And I'm not joined as usual by anyone this week, except guess what? What? The sun is shining. It's a lovely day to introduce the latest diva of the year to move onto the block. But if this introduction feels never ending, don't worry, it's only for now. However, before then, let's splash down in Tiananmen. Oh, shit, wait, no. At John Leguizamo's House of Buggin', that's better, for a screening party with our girls' club in John's little hamlet on the beach, where we'll be dishing the tea on who tripped up and caused enough damages to be put on the blacklist when punking the Today Show crew the following morning. Because this incredible actor, singer, activist, stand-up comedian, sit-down writer, and Fairy Princess Diarist has used her revelations of divine love, life, and laughter to highlight law and order in her captivating career, where her epic skills in starveillance let her, the king, and I spy a spy in a sunny park. But when my slanted eyes are smiling, I can't see a damn thing. Oh, shit. No. I am not being racist.
Yep.
That's on this queen's resume.
No, that's true. That's true.
And so is the vagina monologues, where everyone's a little bit racy and educational, leaving men no closer than ever to still never finding the G-Ro. Oof, cold as ice. But while I fire up the Cinegrill, please help my dog and his master howl a huge Aussie g'day, as well as a flower drum honor song for a crazy horse named Dave. But I can't forget the other two, Nurse Jackie and Cliff Notes Faust, who didn't just honeymoon in Vegas, they met a man on a ledge who regaled them with tales of the tribe. So before we avenue Q to ask, let's welcome this royal into our torture chamber and let some Pretty Little Liar originals in for a short godspell with a good woman who uses her superpowers for greatness. So it's my great honor to introduce Queen Erin Quill. Yay, welcome to the torture chamber. How's it going?
That was amazing. I was like, oh, I forgot some of those things. I was like, really? She sounds fascinating. What is that about?
I'm always so worried when people have titles on their resume that I could be sketchy. I'm going to make a joke out of all your work. It's not deliberate.
Of course, absolutely.
And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I've got two one-woman shows here.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I don't know if I can make a light-hearted joke out of, whereas this one I kind of can, where I can mix it with the I Spy and the King and I.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm glad it was received the way it was intended.
Oh yeah, no,
Phew.
the the cabaret, actually he's just passed, but
Oh, I'm so
my
sorry.
director, my cabaret director was named Clifford Bell, and we were doing a lot of one woman shows at that time. He was like, we need a racy, because that was the St. Patrick's Day show, and so I was like, he said, we need something that's a little challenging, a little in your face, and
Yep.
that's what I came up with. And I remember even he's like, sometimes I'm speechless, not normally, but that one got me. It was a big hit when it was up. Yeah.
Well, sorry to make a joke out of it. It was more clever wordplay.
No, it wasn't. It was a joke all along.
Oh, there you
just
go.
like Agatha.
I feel so much better then because, as I say,
Yeah.
some titles in people's resumes, I wasn't sure how this puppy was going to go. And I've forgotten, actually, I'd put help my dog and his master, which is on your resume as well. I'd forgotten that was in your resume when I let this little brat in because she wouldn't actually let me close the door. She kept sticking her nose in.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
I'm a dog person.
I don't know how she's going to go, but she's got her paw resting on my knee. I don't know if you can see that. She just has to be touching me at all times. So
oh yeah,
she's a brat. And I love her. But anyways, we're going to get into it. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, absolutely.
Did Kay warn you?
No, she just said, hey, would you be up for doing a podcast with somebody I know? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Yep. And mostly when Kay asked me something, actually 100% of the time when she asked me something, I always say yes.
Yep.
Because, I have that yes and background. And I decided about 10 years ago, I was like, sometimes, Quill, you kind of missed out because you said no too early. Mm-hmm. So I try to say yes as frequently as possible.
Yep.
And then everything else is just logistics. Even if it's a bad experience, like I did something and I won't say what it is.
I can bleep it.
I came out of it and I was like, but I did at the end wind up meeting a really fascinating person that I was supposed to be portraying. So, that part was really super cool.
Yeah.
And so the power of yes is very much at the forefront of everything.
Yes.
I think.
You hearing that, Channing Tatum? Please say yes, come in the show. Anyways, you might have to go out. Yes, okay, so you've got an Aussie citizenship and an accent I can hear.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you had a nice warm piece of Vegemite on toast?
Actually, I have Vegemite in my fridge.
Oh, thank God. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And what about a footy team?
Yeah, I don't like Marmite, but I do like Vegemite. I don't have necessarily an Aussie rules or rugby team, but that's because I don't have a football team, American football team or soccer team or whatever. When I was a kid, I did dance and gymnastics. So I never got into like the hardcore sports, but I've been to many a rugby game because my cousin played. And I remember as a kid watching the ambulance on the side of the field. I was like, what's that for? Like, I was like, because I did play what Americans call soccer as a kid. And I had never seen an ambulance at like essentially like a high school game.
They're wusses.
Yeah, right. Because we wear equipment. One thing I really did have to like clue into that, because culturally I'm right in between. Like my last phone call with Australia was about 2 days ago because my aunt has passed.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You could have postponed. Do you know I would have?
Oh, no. She was very ill for a long time and it wasn't unexpected. And I couldn't go to the funeral anyway. So Australia has been very much present on my mind. My family has been in Australia since the 1870s. Oh, wow. And my great uncle, my grandmother's eldest brother, is actually in the Chinese Australian Museum because he's Caleb Shang, who was the first Chinese Australian to receive medals from the Queen for bravery in World War I.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a long, people think, oh, the Asians in Australia are very recent. Actually, not. No, that's not true. Oh, no. Yeah, we've actually been here quite a while.
Yeah. Here I am asking frivolous questions about Vegemite with a prop that no one at home is going to see.
No.
It's this fascinating story.
So. No, it's okay. And my cousin is William Yang, the photographer, and he has one-person shows all the time. And some of his shows are about the history of my family. So like if you're out and about and you go to see William's show, you might, if you go to see the show Sadness, I think is about my great grandpa.
Oh, wow. I'm gonna have to. Yeah. So you were born in America or Australia? Because that accent's.
I was born in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've always been an Australian citizen. Yeah. My mum registered me as soon as I was born. So
be an Aussie for life. Yep.
Yeah. The only problem is I can't pass it along to my son because he was born in America as well. So that part was unfortunate. I remember being like 7 months pregnant. I was like, how much would it be to get to Australia right now?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, get me to America though. Having said that, maybe not at the moment. I might wait a few years.
Maybe not at the moment. Yeah, wait.
But I've never been to the mainland. I've been to Hawaii.
Oh yeah,
doing this show, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get there and to see a Broadway show because it wouldn't be the same as before doing this podcast because I
Right.
probably wouldn't know someone in the theater, but
Mm.
now I would. So I might know someone on the stage. I might have interviewed them.
Exactly. I'm taking my son later today.
Yeah. I wonder what you're going to say.
Hadestown, because my
Yeah.
friend she's on her last weekend.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
she's gonna do her last. And I kept promising, she's been in the show for 2 runs.
Yep.
And then she told me the last time I saw her, she goes, hey, I'm not gonna do it again. So I was like, all right.
Yep. You have to go when the great Lilias
So
White
you have to go. Yeah,
says
yeah.
to go to see her show, definitely. But
Yeah, you do. She's like, baby, when are you gonna come and see my show? I'm like, oh, because I saw it when John Briones and his daughter Issa was in, and Lilias wasn't in then. Then she came back right after they left. So I was like, how much money have I spent on Hadestown tickets? This is ridiculous. And she's actually being replaced by another friend of mine, Merle Dandridge. So I'm like, that's painful.
yeah.
Painful, the amount of money I'd actually, for a show I'm not even in.
Well, we've mentioned them a few times. So Hadestown producers, if you're listening, send the lady some tickets. But anyway, speaking of Hadestown and Best Musical Tony winners, we're gearing up for the Oscars in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Hold up my Oscars hat, and I cannot wait. All tea, no shade. What is going to be this year's Avenue Q?
What is going to be this year's Avenue Q?
To beat Wicked to the Best Picture. I'm sorry, Wicked fans. I actually want Wicked to win it.
I would like Wicked to win as well, not just because I thought it was excellent. I really did think it was excellent, but because I would like John Chu to win, even indirectly for Best Picture, because I feel like he's had a lot of people, he's been shut out a lot.
Yeah, he has been a bit. And what he did was an achievement.
I know.
Like, that was an amazing achievement. To be honest, I like the movie better than I like the musical.
Yeah, my friend Amy is from Q, is currently playing Madame Morrible on tour. So I'm going to say I love all my Wicked people, film or no. But I will say that the Wicked film explored some things that I had kind of thought about a little bit, but then hadn't really processed.
Yeah.
Also, I used to do shows for charity with Sekon Senbla, and she was the first African-American Elphaba understudy. So to me, the idea of a person of color playing Elphaba was not off the table. And I always said, I don't understand what this bias is seemingly against it, because, they're fully green.
Yeah, they'll cast Nessa Rose. They'll cast Nessa Rose as a person of color, but they will not cast Elphaba. It's like that in Australia as well. And I'm like, well, what does it matter then? If they're sisters, for one thing, but oh goodness, sorry.
No, it doesn't make sense. Actually, they've just cast the first Nessa Rose with disabilities. Yeah. She's actually in a wheelchair on Broadway. And I always used to sit there and think of it, because I've seen it, more than once. I was actually there for its opening night ceremonies, because it opened the same year as Q.
Yep.
And I was there for what we now call the Legacy Robe. I was there for that because we had to give it to Wicked. Yep. And Carmen, who got it for our show, had to present it, and she didn't want to go alone. So I was there. And so I always have like this little, not ownership of Wicked, because I've never been in it. I've never even been called for it, but just a little bit of like, remember that? I share a very small memory with like a lot of very specific people, because I just remember I have photographs of Carmen like running around and clapping everybody's hand and wearing the legacy robe and passing it off, all that kind of stuff. It was a great time on Broadway.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I'd say great times, but we're going to move on to the metal now.
All right.
Have you had much experience with metal, heavy metal, glam metal, thrash metal, industrial metal?
I have.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. This is going to sound really weird, because I'm friends with Jason Page. Jason Page is the guy that sang the Pokemon theme song. And Jason used to have a heavy metal band back in the day. And one of his great friends was Jane Mangini. And Jane and I became friends because we were the only 2 girls in the mix. And then Jane came out to LA because at that time she was thinking about rekindling a relationship with her ex-husband, who's Mike Mangini, who's the great heavy metal drummer, right? And so a couple of times I wound up hanging with a lot of big heavy metal people who they'd be like, oh yeah, Erin, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, musicals. Which I think they kind of love, because it wasn't like I was like, well, I'm a singer and I really want to XYZ. There's no way I could necessarily do what they do, but I am very much appreciative of it. And then also I grew up in New York, specifically on Long Island, and metalheads was some of my best friends in high school. Like, I'd always bring earplugs if I had to go with them to a concert. But that aesthetic of like the big hair and some of them wore makeup and everything like that, they were mostly Caucasian, but they were outsiders within their own group. And I was mixed Asian. So I was an outsider as well. I just didn't have to paint it on.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got along really well. I have a huge love for metal performers. And then my high school choir teacher, her neighbor was Dee Schneider.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she would come in every so often. She'd be like, oh, Dee and I, we went over for a barbecue, blah, blah, blah. As you do. So yeah, metal and I, we are not fully fused as one. Yep. But we are very simpatico. I listen to kind of a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. With that experience, if you could pick your ultimate, most over-the-top rock star writer, what are you going to put in it?
Oh, my goodness.
Opulence, extravagance, wild animals.
Green M&Ms.
Yep.
Bottle of scotch.
Yep.
I never drink backstage. People don't worry about it. But I just have it there to intimidate people. Then lots of lozenges.
Yes.
But specific, sugar-free, Ricola, something, like that. I don't think I'm really that fussy with rider demand.
Oh, no, so you have to be fussy with this one. I like the green M&Ms. That's a good one because it means you're forcing them to do a job.
Right. And then I want all my bottles of water faced one way forward. How about that?
I'll allow that because I have put a caveat. Usually I would say no water because that should be people listening out there. If you're hiring artists, give them water, full stop.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sick of arguing about this with people. Yes. But having them all in the one direction is very diva and I love it.
All the labels must face forward. I'm trying to think of like the most ridiculous ones I've heard. Let's see. What else?
Penguins.
What else could... Oh, yes. Stuffed penguins all over.
Oh, no, I was meaning real ones running around.
Oh, real? Nah, they're very stinky. They're very stinky. I've done a penguin ride and it's disgusting.
Oh, no. That's fair. I've done the fairy penguins down at Phillip Island in Victoria.
Oh, right. Yeah, my sister just did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so adorable. Yeah. It was years ago, though. It was like literally right after I graduated primary school. So it's 1996.
Aww.
God, it was nearly 30 years ago.
Don't think about it.
Oh, Godfathers. Anyways, right. So this week I randomly picked Skarlett Riot's album Invicta.
Right.
For no reason other than the band sounded like my type of lady. So this week I'm trying something new and my solo reviews because usually I'd have a co-host and they'd review one and I'd review the other. But being solo, I never know whether to review both. Do I not review anything or what? So I'm going to do pros and cons.
Okay.
I just had my pen in my hand and it left my hand at some point. Oh, it's underneath the booklet. Okay. Skarlett Riot, Invicta. The first pro, right off the mark, it's hard.
Yeah.
The con, it feels like they're holding back a little bit at first, at least through the first maybe quarter of the album.
Actually, I would agree with that. And there's no ballads.
Like one.
Yeah, one, but not like I do think they're definitely hitting their marks, but everything has a very similar drum beat for the, and I was like, I would have liked, maybe one more ballad, something crazy fast, something, like that. Like when I'm planning a show, I go through it and I'm like, because I direct a lot of students and I'll do like, oh, here's a solo, here's a trio, here's, you know what I mean? I'll go through what I know and then I'll find music and performances to fit that, just so the audience is always engaged. And that's a little bit what I really loved it. I loved her sound. She sings so well and it's a really healthy sound, which is not always at the top of the list with the metal band. Sometimes it's very yelly,
which is my next pro, a yearning in her voice, enclosed voice, that you can hear that. But the con there is that the lower, more subtle notes I thought were stronger, but also less frequent, which I thought was a shame because there was not that peaks and valleys. It was just a lot of yearning. So the next pro was it's moody, but the next con is that it's bad moody.
It's very inward facing, I think.
Yeah, it's very emo. Next pro is it's cinematic and theatrical, but with less peaks and valleys than I would have liked, which is sort of what you mentioned in terms of variety. And you're right there that one ballad probably wasn't enough, although just wait till I get to that comment here. Next con, it feels structured in parts, letting loose only in moments, but not necessarily as a statement, as a this is the moment where we're going to let loose a bit, as opposed to like a band like I can't really think of anything. Maybe Mr. Bungle. The next pro is Into Pieces. I thought was the best song, but the con is that it's a ballad. And the last one is the pro is they're incredibly tight, but the con is they're not as unique as others. So I gave it 3.5.
I would agree with you. I think their overall sound, it still sounds like, and this is horrible, and I apologize to the band Skarlett Riot because I know they've been together 11 years and this is their third album. It still seems to me kind of like a beginner or like maybe a second album in that they haven't
paint by numbers.
Yeah, they haven't allowed them. Like, I feel like they're still, even though they're with an indie label, I feel like the label directed a lot of this and it's not a true picture of the band. Like the label's like, this is what you know them for, and you're going to repeat it about, there's 11 tracks. So you're going to repeat it essentially 10 times, and we'll give you one that maybe falls a little bit outside these parameters. They're all good, but combined together, they're a little bit overwhelming, like in their similarity.
Yes, no, I completely agree on that. It did feel quite produced, which I didn't necessarily comment on. Yeah, and there wasn't that uniqueness. Like there are some bands, especially, and I have to be very careful of how I word this. I'm gonna outright say it. Female-driven metal bands are under a lot more pressure. They have to, or at least they feel like they have to do that little bit extra more.
Yeah,
it's like cisgendered drag queens that are, were born female on Drag Race. They feel like they have to do that extra bit more. Or even trans drag queens on Drag Race. They feel like they have to do that extra bit more. And trans people of color feel like they have to do that extra more than the rest of them in order to be level shouldered with everyone else, which is not a good place to be in society, in art at all. I don't care about politics or anything like that. We want artists to be artists. We want them to feel like they can let loose and make a statement that doesn't appease their record company. So yeah.
Well, I always say, because I do a lot of panels, and I just done Broadway Con, and I had 4 panels up. I always say, just sometimes as a person of color, and regardless of sexuality, just your being on stage is a political act. Because the rest of the world really doesn't care if you're there or not. So just by claiming the focus and allowing people to focus on you and a story that you can inhabit, that in itself is a political act. You don't really have to try extra. Like you don't have to do the cooter slam every single time. And having several friends on Drag Race, because I drag queens in LA, and I have a lot of them in my life. Every time I see somebody doing extra slams on stage or extra split jumps or everything, I'm like, girl, you're going to need those hips when you're older.
Yes.
Like you don't have to pop the socket every single time. Like knees and hips and lower back, all of that is required to age gracefully. You don't have to do it every single time. Like, okay, do one camera run with it, but every time they take the stage, that because they're like, oh, that's what I'm known for. It's like, whoa, you'd like to walk when you're 75, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm like, just take it a little easy.
That pressure, I think, is bullshit, and they shouldn't be feeling it. It sucks that they do. But that was felt in this band, that perhaps maybe the production company, or not production company, the producers or the record company is what I'm looking for. They've like, well, you a female singer in a man's world, you got to do it this way, and this is how you're going to do it, and you're going to sell millions of records like that. But who's that pissing off? Metal's meant to piss people off.
Yeah. I think, like, even though it's kind of like they dressed kind of metal, but it's more, I think, glam rock. But the band Heart?
Nancy Wilson.
What about love? Do you want somebody to care about you?
And You're the Voice by John Farnham.
Yeah, right. Those were all like iconic performances with them owning, and there's not like pyrotechnics every note. It's just deep felt.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that, 20, 30, 40 years probably for Heart are still on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be on the pop stations, but they're still played in heavy rotation. It goes to show that if you do a really great power ballad, again, Journey, Walking the Line, not really a metal band, but in terms of the vocals, Steve Perry going hard, he doesn't go hard every single song. No. Like some songs are really simple. And that's, I think, when you see more of the technique, because as you go through it, if all I hear is like crazy sound with drums and guitars and like everything is overlaid and repeated in that, like, what did he call it? The sound stage thing where there's like kind of like they play the guitar and then they double it and then they double it again. It's something in recording where they double the instrument. So you hear more of the instrument than you initially would have heard so like, it's just in production that they do it. And,
I have no idea.
It's kind of like, it doesn't always need to be in that realm.
No,
it can be simpler. Like we look at MTV and we see MTV Unplugged. And no matter who comes on, once they sing their song Unplugged, you kind of can't unhear it because it started off as something really, really simple and meaningful to that artist. And then everything else that happened to the song, regardless, when you come back to the song, it still works. If you just the song and the guitar. And I don't know that I can come back and be like, just play it with a guitar and it works. Like I'm like, maybe it relies a little too heavy on the pyrotechnic thrash sound of it.
Yeah, and the production
and the production values. But I don't want to denigrate it either. I mean, it's their third album. They've been together 11 years. I hope they continue to make music, but I hope they continue to make music that probably pushes them a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's what I want from all these artists.
Yeah,
really, and think about it. I have to listen to a lot of metal. I don't just put them on once either. I put these albums on 20 times, and I'm listening to them on repeat. I'll get on a bus and I'll be out for 2 or 3 hours, and I've listened to it 3 times in that time that I'm gone. And I want a bit of variety. I want to be challenged. I want to have my eyebrows raised. So no, I just 3.5. So you agree on that score? Did you say?
I would, 3.5.
It was good. They're clearly talented.
Yeah.
It just didn't. It was good, not great. Is the difference.
Exactly.
That's it. Well. Anyways, it looks like we can go right to an ad break.
Right.
All right.
Good on ya, mate.
I keep hearing your Aussie accent come through, I swear. I do.
Yeah, well, it does that, especially if I'm talking to somebody. But like, I have American friends and they've never heard me speak anything but
American.
Not the Queen's English, but like George Washington's English. And they probably would be surprised. And like usually throughout the semester when I teach, we'll get to the question of like accents or regionalisms or something, and I'll bust it out. And the kids will be like, what just happened? She did a magic trick. It's like, no, it's not a magic trick at all. For me, it's just remembering what home sounds like. And even though I've been in America for so many years, I don't have any family here anymore, like other than my son and my sister. So, that's what it sounds like. That's all my relatives are back in Australia.
From the producers of Thrash and Treasure, around the world in 80 plays, starring the adorable Lizzie B and Alfie Parker, and featuring the star of the show, Dolly the dog, they'll take you for a trip around the UK, exploring the rich arts and cultural history. But here is a sneak peek.
This week we're in Edinburgh, Scotland. Every theatre really has ghosts, but we're in Edinburgh. Edinburgh's known for its spooky ghosts. So why don't you...
Yeah, I've done my research, and I might have had an experience of my own.
Oh.
Right, so I am a true believer. Alfie is definitely more sceptical, but I believe in ghosts wholeheartedly. Like, I love watching paranormal programs. We watch a lot of celebrity ghost hunters. I just love it. I just kind of think, like, what's the point in not believing?
Yeah, my issue, right? I want to believe that there is something there. I think ghosts is a nice idea.
As long as they're nice ghosts.
Yeah, as long as they're not throwing things around. You know, like, no, because they grab me legs and go, bleh, all of that.
That's never happened to you, has it?
No, but you hear stories of them being like, get out of my house, and they're rattling everything and all of that stuff, and it's just a bit...
Oh, please. Right, so anyway, theatre ghosts is like a massive thing. So I'd say probably every theatre in the world has a ghost.
Yeah.
But with Edinburgh being such a historical place, the Festival Theatre actually has 3 ghosts. And I had an experience with one of them, which I'll talk about later.
We had a brief experience.
Don't spoil it, okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Right, I'm going to talk to you about these ghosts. So the first one, the most famous ghost at the Edinburgh Festival Theatre is called the Great Lafayette. Lafayette? Hamilton reference for you. That's not who it is, but he's called the Great Lafayette. One of the most celebrated illusionists of the early 20th century. Do you know what an illusionist is, Alfie?
Yes, you know, kind of like disappearing in smoke and, you know, swords. And it's like a branch of magician, right? Yeah. Thank you.
So kind of like Houdini.
Yeah,
yes.
I wanted to say Houdini, but yeah.
Cool. He was the highest paid entertainer in theatre at the time.
When was this?
In the early 20th century. Okay. Do you know when that was?
Do I know when that was?
Yeah, what year are we sort of talking there? Early 20th century?
1920 something?
Earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 1900s.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right.
Well done. This is going quite well.
I've got my GCSEs.
And apparently he was a very lavish performer. And so that brought the audiences in, which kind of justify that he was getting paid all this money.
Right.
So, spring of 1911, he was performing at the Edinburgh Festival Theatre, and he did his finale, which was called The Lion's Bride. And what he did in The Lion's Bride is he would swap places with a lion live on stage.
I mean, you are asking for trouble, though.
No. See, this is the thing. It's not that went wrong.
Oh, right, okay.
So this Lion's Bride thing happened successfully, and then out of nowhere...
Which we won't get into. Anyways, we're going to get back into the episode. We're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron. That's not. And we're joined by our second Broadway Christmas Eve, Erin Quill.
Hello!
If the performing arts had an Olympics for amateur artists, which events would you want to watch people compete at? And what discipline would you compete at to win gold? And would it be accent?
And would it be accent work? Well, I think to deny that there's accents on Broadway and the ways that people can perform is kind of ridiculous. You know, when people start to get upset about accents, and in particular, it is my Asian heritage actors that get mad about accents. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're getting mad about accents because, and I usually say this, haven't you ever met an Australian? Like, we don't ask Chris Hemsworth to come over here and completely talk like a Yank. That's not, it would cut off half the world. And I have an international family that includes outside Asia. Like I have Irish, I have Scottish, Welsh, like, you know, so I grew up mimicking everybody's accents. Like my grandmother was from Kerry in Ireland, and she always called, you know, to her I was Erin, you know, Erin.
Yes, I've gotten that too from relatives. Ireland and Scotland.
Yeah, they really draw it out. And then like Americans say Erin, very Erin.
Yep.
What? How are you today, Erin? And then Australians say Erin. So it's
we say it right. Yep.
Well, technically it's Irish.
Maybe.
Yeah. It is. It does mean Ireland. So probably the Irish are the most correct.
Yep.
But, you know, accents don't bother me unless somebody hasn't done their due diligence. So I would say there would be an Olympic event, particularly for accents of the UK, because Americans have very bad ears.
Yep.
I will say that they're very bad ears. And so for them, they pick the broadest strokes. And I always say to them, you know, like I'll hear somebody doing an Australian accent and I'm like, yeah, you're in fair income land, mate. I mean, like it's, you know, everything's broad and
Yep. You got putting a shrimp on the barbie, mate. Yeah. Total bogan.
yeah.
We don't say shrimp.
No, we don't say shrimp and we
No.
don't say, like here we don't say bogan. And like in far Queensland, my cousins would say boggin, you
Yep.
know? So I always say, I'm like, well, where in Australia is this person from? Are they from Sydney? Are they from Brisbane? Are they from far north Queensland? Like
Or New Zealand.
Or New Zealand, yeah. And they're just masquerading as Australians. So I think accent work would be a Broadway category. I think we'd have medals in each, you know, of the different, you know, who does the best Scottish, because Americans don't understand the accents. And that to me endlessly bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I think in terms of Broadway, you know, obviously we'd have a category for belting your face off. One would be like how long you could sustain it, like those big numbers. And then the other thing would be how high can you go? Because in some of the modern shows, it's really about how high can you go? Can you belt an E above that C3, right? Because middle C is 2, the next C up is C3. And so composers now are really going for this weird, they're like, this will move the audience. And they put people at like E or F3. And that is actually too high to belt. If you look at the classic shows like Gypsy, Ethel Merman's not belting anything I think above a B flat C, somewhere in there. So if we were going to have a belt category, it would be two-pronged. One, how high can you go? And two, how long kind of can you sustain it? Can you do, you know, everything's coming up roses, all the endings, or can you only do a 16 bar cut?
And with the high one, it has to be to smash a wine glass.
Yeah. And they're getting pretty close. But like I will say, most people who belt, when they do those, it's a mix and people don't really understand what that is, you know, and that is when you bring your soprano down and you just mix it, your placement much more forward. You get this like kind of pingy sound in the front, like right behind your eyeballs. But to me, that wouldn't necessarily be considered belt because belt to me is more chest, like has a lower timbre to it.
Yeah. Now, next question. Have you ever seen a theater ghost?
I have not seen a theater ghost, but I know where they are, actually, and I avoided them. Like in the Golden Theater, so in the Golden Theater in Manhattan, they were all like, you know, the people that had worked there for years and years, they were like, just don't go to the 5th floor. Well, of course, the 5th floor was where there was a dressing room up there. That was kind of all that was up there, a dressing room and a bathroom, but or a toilet. But everybody would be like, don't go up there. There's just something there. So, of course, me being me, and also because we didn't have a proper green room in that theater, it's really more meant for plays and we are a musical. So we went up there and there was a weird thing, like a weird smell up there. And I was like, is it mold? Is it something? So it wasn't comfortable, but I tried to like hang out up there because we had limited space backstage and I didn't want to bother anybody. So I was trying to hang out there. But like, I remember reading a book and then feeling like somebody was sitting across from me, like looking at me. But there was nobody there. But it was just like a feeling. And I was like, right, that's it. And I closed the book, went immediately downstairs to my dressing room. I was like, I'm going to be reading down here. But I will say that the one that has the most ghosts is actually in Los Angeles. There's a theater called East West Players, which is the longest running Asian American theater on the West Coast. And they are housed in a church. And that church was used for the government to round up the Japanese Americans to put in internment camps. And a couple of people have killed themselves there. So they have an ongoing issue with ghosts, which is why I don't really... I don't mess with ghosts. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not scared of them or anything, but I'm like, listen, everybody should get along, you know? And I remember one time I was doing a benefit at East West Players and I was like, going to go into a room. And then I stopped and I was like, listen, I'm just going to go into this room and look around and see if there's a pair of shoes that I can borrow because I've forgotten my shoes. It's not a big deal and I'm not stealing. And I don't know why I felt compelled to do that, but that's what I did.
To respect them.
To
respect the ghost. That's why.
But they apparently hear quite a lot on the flies, you know, above the stage.
Really?
And they must have jumped from there or something.
You know, I hear lots of stories like fires on the stage or people dying on the stage and stuff like that. And it's even like Moses the ghost cat in the UK. That's crazy. But anyways, before we move on to the musical, standing ovations, overdone, or the more the merrier?
If they are too long and interrupt the show, then move along. I don't really like them in the middle of the show. I don't really like them. But at the end, if you really want to appreciate and show your appreciation doing that, that's fine. But like, this is controversial.
Yes.
About 75% of the standing ovations on Broadway are not deserved. People are doing their show.
You're not alone. Trust everyone's.
Yeah, they're doing their show, but like Americans have been conditioned to do this. So like, and I kind of get a little like I sit and I'm like, come, like sit down, like let's move along. So I don't like them in the middle. Maybe I'm too Australian. I don't like them in the middle of the show. I don't hate them at the end of the show. But I don't necessarily think, unless the ensemble's been outrageously good, and there have been shows where the ensemble has been killing it. And the one that comes to mind most recently, and even this is like a year and a half ago, is Some Like It Hot. That ensemble was fire, absolute fire. They did about a 20-minute chase scene at the end of the second act that was outrageous and glorious and like opening doors and people coming in and everything. And like I went to see it with Carmen Ruby Floyd, who's one of my best friends and also was in Q with me. She was a star in After Midnight and stuff. And we were sitting, she goes, girl, all I can think of is how do you get to do an understudy track in this show? And I was like, yeah, I would say no. I'd say no. I just would like, nah, not gonna, because like once you've been a Broadway understudy, that's a lot of what they call you for because it's actually kind of impossible. The fact that anybody can do it is amazing.
Yes.
And the audience seems to think, oh, we have double cast or something waiting backstage in case somebody gets, nah, you have to do your own track. And then on top of it, you have to learn the other track. And maybe with some of the dancers, you have to learn 4 different tracks. Like I had a friend, he covered all of the male parts in the producers, including Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane.
Yep.
And, you know, I came out of that because I saw him when he went on to cover for Matthew. And I was like, wait a minute, you cover all 5 male leads. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, how does your brain work? Because I can do a cover, but I'm not going to do like six covers. That's like, just hire another actor, like quite frankly.
Yeah.
You know, don't be cheap.
But they are.
But they are.
On that, people at home, please stop tweeting that you wanted to see so-and-so in the lead role, but you only got the understudy. Seriously, think that people will see that. And that's not a nice thing to hear. You've just heard Erin speak about what it's like to be an understudy. And yet they have to then log on. You know, maybe it comes across on threads, it comes across the algorithm. They can't control that. They're not choosing to follow this person, but they will talk about that show. So it comes up in their algorithm. They're suddenly seeing that someone was so excited to see superstar in the role, but all they got was the understudy. It's so disrespectful. Stay home if that's how you're going to talk about artists.
Yeah, on that note, I'm always really excited when I get to see an understudy because the understudy may not go on frequently.
Yeah, there might be their only time.
Exactly. So you're seeing someone who's going to leave it all on the stage. Like nothing will remain uneaten. And I've never been to a performance where the understudy has disappointed.
Yep.
Not once. Not once.
I was at Beauty and the Beast opening night recently, and Gaston was the standby or the understudy, and he was absolutely amazing. And he was actually the only cast member I followed after that production. I'll cut that last bit out. So, but just, you know, he stepped in at the last minute on opening night and completely nailed it.
Yeah.
So anyways, we're going to move on to the musical now. And this week it was actually a struggle picking the right musical because without a co-host here, we couldn't do Avenue Q. So we settled on Woman of the Year.
One of my favorites.
Yep. Oh, good. Well, maybe good. Let's see what I thought of this one. The first pro, it's a star vehicle for a diva. And this is what I talk about all the time. This is a dying art form. And this was as late as 81. So it wasn't the time of Wildcat and Mame and Gypsy and all them. It was, you know, it was a bit later.
No, it was a little bit later and people were starting to get away from the diva. I was really lucky because my grandma was over from Australia and she very much wanted to see a Broadway show. Yep. And we went to TKTS, which is a ticket service on 47th Street where you can buy discounted tickets the day of. And Woman of the Year is what, you know, was available. And I remember I was like 6 or 8 or something like that. Anyway, we went to see it and we had third row orchestra seat. And out came Lauren Bacall. And her first outfit is this glitter dress, floor to ceiling, just glitter, glitter, gold, right?
Yep.
Like, let's be honest, Lauren Bacall could not sing. Like, what she was doing in a musical is like anybody's guess. But it was a star vehicle. So her first line is, and I'll never forget it, Sam Craig, wherever you are, listen, you son of a bitch. Listen to that. She's supposed to be at an awards dinner and everybody's applauding her. And then she repeated it. Sam Craig, wherever you are, you arrogant something, son of a bitch. Listen to that. My childhood mind exploded. My mind completely exploded. Then it followed this relationship that she had with a cartoonist. And as I found out later, she was actually having an actual affair with him during the course of the show, which was something I did not know until I was older. Anyway, fast forward. My grandma bought me the cassette tape because at that time it was cassette tapes, children.
Was it 2 or 4?
It was just one.
Oh,
it was just one.
Wow, they fit it all into just one.
Yeah, they just fit it all into one.
Well, technically 1 or 2. Sorry, 2 sides of the one tape.
Two sides of the one tape.
2 tapes is 4 sides. That's what I was meaning there. So it was, 1. Sorry, I'm shutting up.
Nah, and then the next day, I completely had memorized at least one of the numbers.
Yep.
And my parents asked me what I was doing, and I sang verbatim, I think like probably that same passage I just did.
Yep.
And my mother looked at my dad and she's like, oh no, trouble. And because my mother had been a ballerina and my grandma had been a concert pianist. So she knew the genes were there. She just didn't, she knew how hard it was. So she didn't really want that for me. She would have much preferred if I had been an attorney like my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so in many ways, Lauren Bacall is why, because I was starstruck, right? I was completely starstruck with how glamorous and amazing she was. And, but as you listen back, she's really sing. Like, I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. She's like a basso profundo. But she came to Avenue Q, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she came backstage and everybody's like, now she wasn't the only celebrity there that night because we were the new show. And so everybody wanted to come back, but she came in and I was like, oh my God, I have to talk to her. So I went up to her and I said, Miss Bacall, I'm so sorry, but I'm in the show. And I wanted to say, when I was 6, I saw Woman of the Year and I saw you. And I absolutely, you're the reason I do this. And she looked at me and she said, Woman of the Year, that piece of shit.
Oh.
And I was like, great conversation. Good. Pose for a picture. And so then I have this picture of Lauren Bacall looking like, just completely over it and me smiling as big as possible. And I was like, I can't tell this story until she dies. And then when she died, that's what I did on my Instagram or my whatever, Facebook or whatever we had. I posted the picture and I told the story and I was like, I always said I'd save this one for when she died.
Goodness me.
That old piece of shit. And I was like, okay. Good talk.
Yeah. Oh, goodness me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually do worry about that doing this show and loving things when I don't want someone to be like, oh, that was the worst thing on my career. How dare you bring that up? Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I love it. Anyways, the next con is the story was unclear in the music, which was I would have said is of its time, but it's not. This was 1981, so, and this is Cantor and Ebb.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a con there. Though I did use Wiki to read the story. It's based on a film. The next pro is I thought the songs were great.
Yeah, the songs are great.
The songs are great. They're funny, they're charming, they're whimsical. But the con is that it doesn't feel like Cantor and Ebb. Like, it just doesn't feel like one of their...
Well, it's not dark like Cantor and Ebb.
That's it. It's not cynical.
Yeah, it's not I Am Camera, aka Cabaret, where it's like hedonistic. I Love Woman of the Year was the first show I ever really saw. And I did understand it, but like I'm seeing it in person, right? And it was the first time that women had really pushed themselves in the workforce. It was coming off of that feminine empowerment. And that's what it was. It was the argument like, can you have it all? Can you work and succeed and also be married and also maintain maintain this relationship? Or is something about the pursuit of success going to undermine your relationship at all? You know, and I understood it even from when I was a kid. I understood. I was like, oh, see, she's working, but she doesn't have children. She doesn't have a family. She's already been through an ex-husband. She's living alone with a housekeeper and a butler, taking care of all her stuff. And then she meets this guy, and he doesn't necessarily need her, but they just happen to fall for one another. Like, the thing is, like, she was fine on her own and he was fine on his own. And if you don't really have that overwhelming need to connect and share everything, is it really worth it? And I think I did get that as a child, like, because I've been very cautious in my relationships that way, because I've been like, there's not, you can't really, to have it all is a fallacy. You know, there's always going to be something that's got to give.
That's it. Well, the next pro, everyone can disagree with me here, but Lauren Bacall actually surprised me. Not saying she's a great singer.
No, she's not.
But there's a lot more to playing a part than just hitting strong notes.
Yeah.
It is adding character. It's adding nuance. It's adding feeling and emotion. It's adding a vibe, a personality. And she was just really enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah.
She just had this charm to her. It's not always about hitting the note.
No, it's not.
Something we come across on this listening to older CDs compared to newer CDs. I mean, no disrespect, but I sort of feel like that unique charm in people's voices has gone these days, less than what it used to have been. Like, you could tell who was who. People stood out a little bit more. These days, everyone's a really brilliant singer, technically brilliant, but there is lacking a few here. And now I'm not going to name names because I know it's utterly disrespectful.
No, we're a bit too technically perfect right now. And I personally like it when people are a little bit messy.
Yeah.
And actually watching her, even at that age, I was like, I fully was invested that she was this powerhouse television journalist. Like, there was no doubt in my mind. And I knew she was an actor and I knew it was a part. Like, I understood all that. But she fully inhabited, and like, one of my great things to listen to that I just like put on any old time is the Camelot CD. But I put on the movie version.
Richard Harris,
with Richard Harris, because he acts it. He acts the song, right? It's like there's a clip of Judi Dench singing "Send in the Clowns" on something, and she acts the song, as opposed to sings the song,
breaks your heart and tears you apart and rips it up and kicks you out on the street.
Yeah, no, she absolutely is. And like even Glynis Johns, was not a great actress, but there's something about the fact that her voice is unsteady and that she's not quite always in the middle of the note that is so human.
Yes.
You know, and I do think we err very much on the perfection side now. And I always say this to students that are trying to, I'm like, listen to the cast recording once or twice, just so you get the melody in your head, but do not try to emulate the cast recording, because then you're becoming a copy of a copy of a copy. We don't know what you do with it. If we knew what you did with it, maybe it would be the most amazing song for you. But if you're just trying to sound like Megan Hilty or Idina Menzel or Cynthia Rivio or something like that, then that's not your true voice. And we have to get back a little bit to authenticity and to everybody being present instead of phoning in a technically perfect performance.
Because that'll be there.
It's boring.
It's boring, but it's going to be there in your skill set.
Yeah.
But what's not going to be in your skill set that has to come from you is the personality, the charm, charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. That's what it is.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and I did see Raquel Welch do Woman of the Year about like a year and a half later after Lauren Bacall. And I remember thinking, she sang much better than Lauren Bacall.
Yeah.
But I did not believe her.
Yeah.
I did not believe her. And she did that for quite a while, that run, because I think the show ran for like 5 years and they kept just replacing who the diva was.
And it was Debbie Reynolds as well.
Yeah, but in my mind, no one did it better than Lauren Bacall. And she couldn't even sing.
And she couldn't sing, but she came the part. She added herself to
She acted it.
Yeah, there's a quote here from John Kander that Raquel just didn't understand where the jokes were.
That I will, to my childhood mind, I could have told her where the jokes were.
Yep.
I was watching it like, yeah, you missed that one, you missed that one, you missed that one. But all of that goes into I'm taking my son to see Hadestown later. I take him to a lot of shows because I want the performances in his memory bank.
Yes.
I want whatever culture that, like I was chatting with Michael Arden, who's right now he's directing Maybe Happy Ending, but he did Once on This Island.
Yep.
I said to him, I was like, I took Liam to see Once on This Island. And I told the same thing to Tina Landau because I worked with her on Dave. I said, he is young, but I don't know what seeing these shows are doing to his creativity in his head. And I want him to do whatever he wants to the utmost, but I want him to know the standard.
Yep.
I want him to have a memory bank full of variety and representation and all these different things. I took him to see Titanic. He was invited to Something Rotten by the producer when he was 3 years old because he used to listen to it in the car and he sang it when he met him. And Jordan Roth was like, oh my God, you've got to bring him. And I said, yeah, he's 3. And he goes, that's okay. So we waited until he was just under 4 and then they announced their closing. So I called Jordan and his office and I was like, does he still want Liam to get? He goes, absolutely. So he gave Liam a house seat right down front on closing night. I could not believe it. And he sat through it. He just went and saw his first Shakespeare play. He's 12 now. He went to see his first Shakespeare play. It was an all-Asian, all-female production by NATCO, which is the National Asian American Theatre Company. And he loved it. He loved it, especially when there were swords because he is still 12. But he got it. So anytime people say to me, oh, the arts are not for children or the arts have to be dumbed down to be palatable to children, I say just bring them. Yes. Honestly, as long as they can sit, just bring them and see what happens. Yeah. Because that's how my parents raised me.
Amen. That might be an Australian thing, though. When I look at some of the things that I watched growing up, I think, maybe not a good idea. But I don't regret it.
No, I don't regret it. When I was in Far North Queensland, the local company did Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah. Now, I was little, like maybe 5.
It's the most random place to do Fiddler on the Roof.
I hear they do Les Mis every couple of years because they have one guy who can really sing it and he packs the place. Anyway, it's not a professional theater. It's just they decided to do Fiddler on the Roof. Anyway, I was so enamored of it and tickets were cheap that I said to my mom, I have to go back. And my mom wound up bringing me 4 or 5 times during the time we were vacationing with my grandparents to see Fiddler on the Roof at that time, at this local little Cairns, production. And then I came home and I demanded cast recording and we played it hours and hours and hours. And that's a show I will never be able to do. I'm never going to be able to do Fiddler on the Roof, but I culturally felt it, meaning that I comprehended it. I didn't really understand pogroms or any reason why they had to leave Russia like that. All right over my head. And honestly, probably it went over the head of the people performing it because it was Far North Queensland.
Yes. But and in the audience and in the concession stand.
On the stage, in the audience, they were all like, why do they have to leave Russia? We don't know. But 5 times I saw it because I loved it.
Oh God, that's like 18 hours.
Yeah, I loved it. It was all of $18, right, for me to go at that time. But I just fell in love with it. So I say, when you think your kids are old enough they can sit through something, you should bring them because you don't know how it's going to work out.
Exactly. No, I completely 100% agree. I'm just going to quickly run through these because we're running a little bit over time now.
Yep.
The male characters weren't drawn very well. I thought they left a lot to be desired, which, I mean, it's a star vehicle for Lauren Bacall, but still, you want the rest of the characters to be enjoyable. One of the boys needs to be done as the Drag Race lip sync for your life song, because that would be hilarious to let them do that. Sorry, that was a pro. The con, the best song is also the penultimate track, which was obviously the showstopper where Marilyn killed it every night. And
killed it.
I got a whole 5 pages of a book that Tony Sheldon sent me to help with this episode. I mean, the rest is enjoyable enough, though. So, but it's just not the usual Candor and Ebb level of character nuance and vibe. The pro is it's not overdone. We haven't seen 1,000 productions of it, so this was a refreshing listen. However, the con was that it felt like a younger sibling to the Pajama Game, which I actually really love. The Pajama Game's really fun.
Yeah, and yet it was written after. Yeah.
So I gave it 4 stars. I really did enjoy the listen, especially after Skarlett Riot was a bit of a slog to get. Oh, it's a horrible thing to say. Especially after Skarlett Riot, I was a bit sort of iffy about here and there. This song, there wasn't really any, or maybe one song, I think the Ballad by the Man. I can't remember what it's called.
Sometimes a Day Goes By.
Yeah. I was just like, no, okay. Give me the fun songs. That's what I want, the fun songs. And that's what they did so much better. Even though it's 1981, I'll say back then. Oh, God, we're so old.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, people don't write songs like that anymore. They don't write songs to be inserted into a play.
No.
And that's kind of what Woman of the Year is. It's songs with actual scenes and actual dialogue.
Yep.
Now, with everything sung through, it's far more like opera than anything else because there's no dialogue in Wicked. There's maybe one or two leading into one or two lines leading into a song, but
And the line, me and Buck, which has driven everyone crazy online.
Me and Buck. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't get why is everyone so obsessed with that, right? And I was watching all the comments, right? And then I put it on and I found myself laughing at it. And I'm like, why am I laughing? Why is everyone finding it funny? Is it because she just says it? Because she's like singing me and Buck.
I don't know. I think this munchkin boy for me. Me and Buck. Maybe it's just because the way it lands on the note. Buck.
But I don't know why. It's kind of funny. That's the thing.
Maybe it's funny because Ethan and Ariana are together now.
Possibly, yeah. Goodness me. I just want to throw in a quick couple of notes here. This was actually given to them, Kanda and Eb, to write, so it wasn't really a passion project like the other ones, which did, I think, come through a little bit. This is all from Cuddled Lights by Greg Lawrence. Lauren Bacall's nickname by John Kanda was Jimmy, because when she first called him, he thought it was Jimmy Coco, who he played poker with. So he thought it was a man, so that was her nickname after that. But one little thing I loved was that anytime a song was cut during the out-of-town tryouts, Lauren Bacall took responsibility for it and said, it's my fault, I just can't sing, I just don't have the voice for it. And that is a diva.
Yeah.
That is why she is who she was, because a leader.
Yeah, she was amazing on stage. She was one of the old school, like the lead is the leader.
Yes.
Nowadays, I don't think our lead players, I would say Audra McDonald maybe is the closest, but they don't seem to take as much ownership of, management working from the top down because we're all equal. We're all equity members. Just casting is so involved. Yeah. I mean, look at Hamilton, like Ariana DeBose was Bullet in Hamilton. She didn't have any solo lines or anything. And then all of a sudden she did the one project and it flew, and now she's got an Oscar and and she's hosting the Tony Awards every year. So that is a relatively new way of thinking about company morale and company policy. But like I will say, I did The King and I with Debbie Boone as Mrs. Anna, and Debbie Boone very much functions like that. Like anything that goes slightly awry, she's like, I should take care of that. But also her dad was, Hollywood royalty. So like it is a thought process in as much and a way of being that is not prevalent anymore, because we do all kind of like, if you went into a show with Adina, you'd be like, I'm in a show with Adina, and you'd be allowed to call her Adina. Whereas like years ago, if it was Miss Bacall, the ensemble would call her Miss Bacall.
Yeah, and don't look at her in the eye.
Yeah. It's a little bit of that.
Yeah, that. Anyways, well, enough candor. Let's ebb and flow to an ad break. G'day listeners, Aaron here. I'm not going to have any bloop news updates this week because, unfortunately, things happening in the world have taken precedence, and on this show we've had many guests from Los Angeles, and some of those guests have had to evacuate, so I just wanted to send a message to them that we're thinking about them. My heart is with them. I've reached out to everybody and I've heard back from pretty much everybody so far, which is a relief, obviously. But I wanted to let our listeners know that you at home, no matter where you are in the world, you can help this situation and donate to the animal shelters around Los Angeles and Southern California, who are now taking in a whole bunch of animals that are displaced. So what I'll do is I'll put a link below to a Newsweek article that lists all the animal shelters that are currently taking in animals. All these bullshit arguments online don't matter. What does matter is that there are innocent lives involved, and much of those are animals. So let's all band together, donate to the animal shelters in Los Angeles and Southern California, and help them out in this incredibly devastating time. So again, to our past guests, I would list everyone, but I would just forget one or two people, and I don't want to forget anybody, but I have reached out to everyone, so everyone knows who they are. And to everyone listening, if you're in Los Angeles or California, my heart is with you as well. And everyone at Thrash and Treasure is thinking of you because we all know people in that area. Anyways, on that note, back to the episode. We're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, and if I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free with Erin Quill. Now, what's one thing you're terrible at that everybody else can do perfectly well?
Google Docs. I'm terrible with Google Docs. I'm not great. It's funny because I do have a blog in it, but like, I don't remember how I learned how to do it. So
Yep.
I don't remember anything about programming or how to plug things. Like, it's just natural. And so like when they update the software or they change something or anything, I'm like, oh, damn it. Everything changes. So Google Docs would be my number one thing that everybody else seems to just pull out of their ass, and I can't do it at all.
That was very Australian, pull out of your ass. Now, are you much of a gamer?
I am not, but my son is.
Oh, I get lost for hours.
Oh, yeah. Well, and see, the thing is, like, as a parent, that's like the danger, right? That they can like disappear.
Yes.
So I'm always like, I'm the sayer of no. So I'm the one that comes in and is like, right, that's enough.
Well, once you start, you won't be able to stop.
I know. And that's the other thing, because back in the day when you had to put a quarter or 20-cent piece into a machine, I was obsessed with like those standalone games. So I think I had to step away because one, it was very expensive when it came down to it. But two, I could get locked in, like really locked in. And that's when I figured out how dangerous it was. For me personally, you know.
No, that's trust. I've lost many hours and days to video games and I shouldn't have. But anyways, we're going to go a bit deeper now. Avenue Q has been constantly spoken about, defended, cancelled. And we had Anne Harada on the show, and she made her stance very clear on where she sits with it all. So for you, what's your relationship with these more quote-unquote controversial aspects of the musical?
Do you mean like everybody's a little bit racist?
I read some hot take on I'll put on hot quotes, hot take on it, that no matter how liberal it claims to be, at the end of the day, it boils down to the status quo on top and stuff like that. And I'm like, where are you getting this from? They're literally just puppets. Like, it's satire. It's not necessarily meant to be evil wins at the end.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be rocket science. It's supposed to be a puppet show for adults, because adults have complicated issues, such as you can have sex with somebody and it can mean nothing. Or you can get into a bind and run up your parents' credit card bill and they cut you off and you can't afford to live, or you can't get a job. All of these adult issues are not solvable. Well, the credit card thing is solvable, but if you don't have a job, it's not. So to me, Avenue Q was written by Jeff and Bobby and Jeff. And it was really like, this is where we're at in our 20s/early 30s. These were the lessons they were having to learn over and over again.
Yep.
So, you know, it doesn't actually bother me. Do some of the jokes need to be updated? Well, yeah, of course, because they're jokes, and jokes are contemporary, you know, a lot of times.
That's in like pop culture references.
Yeah, pop culture references.
So not necessarily ones that would offend.
No. Well, the thing is, like, first of all, everything that I've found out in this last election in America does indicate that everyone is a little bit racist, and some people are quite definably more. And so I think that tracks. Is everything in life only for now? Absolutely. Everything in life passes. And if you talk to, like, I remember I was in the National Gallery in DC when I was doing Dave, and it was right after Trump had been elected the first time. And I went to see Obama's portrait. And I was looking at Obama's portrait and I just burst into tears. Like, just, I don't know what it was. It was just like a visceral thing of seeing it. He's so beautiful in the portrait. And then he's surrounded by green foliage. And it was just really moving.
Yep.
And as I burst into tears, this older Black lady came up and she put her hand on my shoulder and she says, honey, we're going to get through it. And I looked, and like in her face, I saw so much wisdom. And also just like, I have been through things that I can no longer even speak about, young lady. And I was like, right, yes, ma'am. Yep. And that's exactly what I said. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You're right. We'll get through it. She's like, you just got to keep buckling down and doing what you do, or something like that. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And I honestly felt a little bit embarrassed, because our grandparents and great grandparents and so forth and so on, they tackled far bigger hurdles in many cases than we do. And yet we look at these not little things, sometimes they're huge things, But we look at these things and we see only despair and torment and an endless hamster wheel of crap.
Yep.
They managed to pull themselves out of kind of far worse pickles, you know. And I think when you have to go through hard times, it does build character and it does build resolve. And we forget that. We forget that now.
And then the kids today will go, you can't make me go through hard times. Like, no, the kid's life will make you go through hard times.
Yeah.
What we are saying is you need to go through that. You need to let yourself go through those things. Not everything. And some things are going to be fucking horrible.
Some things are going to be bad.
Some things are going to destroy you. But you do, at the end of the day, have the strength inside you. You just need to find it somewhere. So anyway, sorry, it's not my answer.
That's exactly right. And so it's kind of a lighthearted way. Like if you can go, like we were blithely singing, George Bush is only for now, right?
In a post 9/11 world where he was suddenly the hero, quote unquote, the hero, for a couple of minutes, until things.
Exactly. And now we look on George Bush in the United States like, oh, remember how bad we thought it was then? We thought it was so bad. And like now it's like,
bring him back.
What does he do now? He just paints pictures and has a good time and makes weird faces. Like, let's bring back kind of like.
That was crazy, but it wasn't vicious like it feels today.
It wasn't ever vicious. It wasn't mean. And it wasn't ill-spirited. And I feel like that's the current administration. It's ill-spirited and mean.
And the people as well.
I have a neighbor who came up straight to my face and was like, I'm voting for him. And I was like, well, I mean, that's your right. I said, but you and I will not be friends. And she was very offended. And I said, well, listen, my friends are all of the LGBTQ, and my son and I are minorities. And with your vote, you're saying we are less than. And I don't believe us to be less than. So you and I intrinsically have to just trust each other because you cannot acknowledge my personhood. And she said, well, if I saw you getting bullied or something, I would intervene. And I said, well, Donna, isn't that lovely for you? I said, do you think you're going to be with me when some guy decides to like harass me? Do you think you're going to be with my kid when all the kids at school like jump on him or something? You're engendering racism. You're encouraging it. So no, I cannot vote. I cannot be friends with you because you voted for that monster. I was like, have a nice life. And I turned and walked away. I haven't spoken to her since, you know, and that's maybe a little bit past Avenue Q, but like, do I think Avenue Q should be revived? I really don't know. Avenue Q came at a time when America needed it. And, you know, I'm sure if producers feel that America needs it again, it will come back. But like somebody went to town on Anne and myself personally, and on one of the Facebook things, like, well, what do we expect from you two? You caved out and used accents. And my response was kind of like, again, one, have you never heard an Australian? Like an Australian coming over would have an accent. I said, but two, immigrants have accents. And there's nothing demeaning or ridiculous about accents. They just are. The problem becomes when you make the accent the joke. And I don't think Anne or I or any of the consecutive Christmas Eves, Anne, Hazel, Sala, Lisa, any of them, I've seen them all do it, and none of them made the accent the joke. And I think that's the problem nowadays, that people have a difference of understanding what is parody and what is an actual joke. Like they don't understand subtle nuance, and they don't understand that everything is not to be taken 100% seriously. Like I had a student and she happened to be of Chinese descent, and I had another student who was also of Asian descent. And I was like, great, well, we can, because we were doing a Sondheim show. So I said, okay, great, you can do this number from Pacific Overtures. And she was like, you're racist. And I was like, excuse me, what? And she goes, I'm Chinese. I was like, right, I'm Chinese too. What are you saying? And she's like, you're making me do this Japanese song. I was like, it's not a Japanese song. It's a Stephen Sondheim song. I was like, if you really don't want to do it, that's fine. But you need to understand that like Asian Americans have so little representation across our stages.
Take what you've got.
Yeah. I said, I'm giving you shows that you can use to audition when you get out in the world. And she wasn't having any of it, and like proceeded to make my life kind of miserable for about the next semester.
That's the goody one shoe. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
this is your answer as well, but there are so many of us, so many people out there, I mean, include myself, that are on the right path, trying to do the right thing. But there are those who are the goody one shoes that'll be obnoxious about it, but be wrong, and they'll get in our way.
Right. Yeah. It was very difficult
Sorry.
at the time because it really, no, it really shook me. And then I mentioned it to somebody else in the department who was also of Asian descent, and he started crying. He goes, "Well, what is she? What?" And I said, "You know what? It just is what it is." But he actually started tearing up because he said, "You've done so much activism. You know, my blog is 13 years old now, and it's changed the stages of America in terms of it's about seeing everyone, and casting should not be about DNA. Casting should be, could you tell a believable story to people that don't have your DNA?" And the truth is, like, Asians can represent other different groups. We don't talk like the God of Thunder is Australian, right? But shouldn't the God of Thunder be Greek?
No, Norwegian. It's
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah.
but you know, you're absolutely right. Russell Crowe played Zeus.
Asians are the only ones that do this to ourselves, not only just, we never argue about, Cynthia Rivia is from London, and she's over here playing a bunch of different, like, iconic American characters, and nobody's saying like she can't do it because it's believable and it's in her wheelhouse to do it. And she's fantastic talent. So, I do worry about the future, about people like canceling Avenue Q. I mean, cancel it, don't cancel it. But the issue is not about cancel, don't cancel for me. The issue is about understanding and tolerance.
Understanding what it's meant to do.
Yeah.
There's two types of offensive humor. That is a deliberate attack, and that is not a deliberate attack. That is meant to be offensive humor. We're meant to laugh at what is offensive. That's what many look at the Book of Mormon.
Oh, the Book of Mormon, and that's another one that people have been talking about canceling. I'm like, you know what? If Donnie and Marie haven't called for it to be shut down, then let it go.
Yeah, I have noticed living in Australia and sort of having a lot of friends growing up, people that directly came from the Philippines and Japan and Korea and stuff like that. There is a different way that people of mixed race, born in America or born in Australia, how they take to things like Christmas Eve than how people in Japan and Korea and those countries take to quote unquote stereotypes, because they love the stuff over there.
Yeah.
Whereas over here is where we're complaining, which I find interesting.
Well, I think it's because, like, mixed race people, I am mixed race. For those of you listening and can't see me, I am clearly multiracial.
And you can hear it in your accent.
Well, I can start talking like an American. The difference is for mixed race Asians, and I found this particularly in Australia, that if you're not presumably white Australian and if you're not Aboriginal Australian, they really don't know where to put you.
I would disagree with that.
Really?
Sorry, I know. Yeah, do you know why? Because I'm nearly 40, right? And I have never, in a professional tour, I've never seen an Indigenous Australian performer in the lead role. Never.
Oh, well, that is true. I mean, like, there's a lot of work to be done with that.
Oh,
there's a lot of work to be done with that.
Americans I have, and New Zealanders I have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But just to throw it in there, someone actually said to me recently, and I lost a friendship over this because admittedly they're black, I'm white, but they're African American and I'm white Australian, right?
Right.
They said that no Indigenous Australians should be allowed to play in Hairspray. And I'm like, because it's not
their story.
But it is their story.
It is their story.
It's a parallel of their story.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, nah, sorry.
I agree with you.
I can't sit there as a white person and tell Indigenous Australians what they can't do.
Right. I agree with you.
Put me in a position of quote unquote white splaining,
right?
But also going against a person of color, a black woman from America who's clearly passionate about it. But you look at the history of Australia, there were signs on shops saying white Australians only. It is a parallel of their story. They have all the right in the world. So the only production I've seen on had American performers and in Kiwi performers. There was not a single Indigenous Australian on the stage. And I was just...
Yeah, they had that with the Helpman Awards a couple of years ago that I wrote about. Yeah.
Sorry, it just...
No, it's listen, there's a lot to be said about like world culture and how people perceive ownership over it. Like, I'm not going to speak for anybody, but I understand both sides of that argument. I would argue that if you're in Australia, you should be using Australian performers.
Yeah. And that should be all.
End of story.
That should be all. That should be expats from America,
Yeah.
expats from New Zealand. It should be expats from England.
Yeah.
It should be expats from Africa and Indigenous Australians.
End of story. Yeah.
It should not be a matter of cut them out. No, that's why we got here in the first place.
Yeah,
So-
I don't think DNA is necessarily the harbinger of good casting.
No.
Is really what it is. But like as a mixed Asian person who's wandered in and around Australia a bit longer than your 40 years.
Yep.
Although I don't look it,
Not that much longer.
Well, I will say that mixed Asian Australians, and even within my own family, like my great grandfather was murdered for being Chinese.
Oh, God.
And that led to a whole slew of events because the murderer was caught, but wasn't, and admitted it, but wasn't prosecuted because he was white. And they said, and if they treated the Chinese like humans, then the argument was they'd also have to treat Aboriginals like humans. And it led to like almost a race riot up in far north Queensland. And so they buried it.
Bloody hell.
Right?
I hate this fucking world sometimes. I'm sorry, but
I know yeah.
I try to do the right thing. I'm in the wrong. I do the wrong thing. I'm in the wrong.
Yeah. There's no winning.
Yeah. I hear stories like this and I'm like, this is a losing battle for all of us.
Yeah.
How do we heal it? Sorry.
We can't really, but I will say the reason maybe mixed Australians don't want to fully invest into Christmas Eve because she is an immigrant is because the actor does have to use an accent in it. And maybe it's a sore spot for them because they've been called XYZ growing up.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Like I was called things when I was in Australia. And that in part was why my mother really didn't want to raise us in Australia because of the racism. And like we still got racism in the United States. So there's no winning. So I get why Asian Americans and Asian mixed Australians that have been there that are maybe second generation, I understand why they wouldn't like Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I did, as you mentioned before, I did this show called I Spy a Spy. And one of the writers is Australian and the other composer is Korean and they're married. And when I went in and auditioned, they said to me, now I'm not Korean, but I was married to a Korean for 18 years. So I had been around my mother-in-law, my extended Korean family by marriage quite a lot. My husband at the time was very inundated in Korean culture. So I understood quite a lot about customs and all these different things and expectations. And so when I went into audition, they started to give me the long explanation of what this character was. And I said, well, she's an Ajumma, right? And you never saw somebody's face light up like the composer. She's like, yes, she's an Ajumma. Oh God, you get it. Oh, you get it. And I did the character with a Korean accent that was absolutely authentic because it was my mother-in-law's accent. And I remember somebody who actually is kind of well known, and I won't say it is, but she's Korean American. And she went to one of the showings. The only expression is she had a real puss on her face and she sat right in the front. She was not happy with it until we got to the second act. And then I came out in one of those, which I had bought. I came out in one of those visors that covered my whole face. And I started yelling about drones or something like that as part of the script. And she finally broke. She's like, okay, yeah, that's, and I saw her mouth like, yeah, you got me. You got me. So I will say that, yes, Asian Americans, mixed Asian Australians who've been there for a generation or two and do not speak an Asian language, we do have a chip on our shoulders. We absolutely do. And it's up to us to understand that everything is always not directly pointed at us. People are not always trying to offend us. One of the writers of Avenue Q is a mixed Asian. Bobby Lopez is Asian. He's Filipino.
Oh, Filipino. Oh, wow.
So I know. Talaga, book it away. Book it. Do you know why?
I know it's Tagalog. I know. Pwede po bang ng beer.
Yeah, exactly. So Christmas Eve was actually a kind of tribute to his dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And a lot of people really, and he is also the youngest EGOT winner, which means for those at home, he's got an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony, EGOT. Yep. And he is mixed Asian, which is amazing. Just as knowing Eddie Van Halen, the Van Halens were mixed Asian. They were mixed Indonesian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, they only really highlighted it after he died. But honestly, as a kid, if I had known that Eddie Van Halen was mixed Asian, I would have bought every album.
Yep.
I would have followed him maniacally because I did like the music. I do like the music. Yep. But just, mixed Asian is a category unto itself. It is a relatively new category, really only started happening in the 1970s in America anyway.
Mhm.
And, we still, as a group, don't really know where we fit. And we are people of color.
Mhm.
And yet it is very easy for us to marry a white person and have kids, and the kids don't look Asian at all. And I remember during the pandemic, I brought my son and my 2 nieces to the park, and I was verbally attacked by a white guy. And he told me I was disgusting and from disgusting people and all these things. And my nieces are blonde hair with blue eyes, the 2 of them. And they were shook beyond shook. And my son looked at them, because it had happened a couple of times during the pandemic where people just came up and started.
Bloody hell.
He said, "Mummy, is that because you're Asian?" And I said, "Yeah."
No, it's because that guy's a douche. It's because that guy's a douche, Erin.
Right. But he looked at the girls and he said, "That's what happens when you're Asian." And their jaws just dropped. And the whole ride home was them asking me questions about it. And Gracie, who's the youngest, she said to me, "Is that going to happen to me?" And I said, "No, Gracie, because you don't look Asian." And then when I brought them home, my sister called me up later yelling and screaming. She's like, "Don't you tell Gracie she doesn't look Asian." I'm like, "She categorically does not look Asian." Like, congratulations, you've done it. You've assimilated into whiteness, lady. She is not. I said,
shouldn't laugh, but it's just the way you said it.
I know. Yeah. I was like, I'm the one that's just been attacked and almost punched in the face. How about how are you? How about a little bit of how are you? Where's the compassion there? But the truth is, I had to understand that Gracie may not look Asian, but she feels like she is fully Chinese.
Yeah.
And so then Gracie and I had to have a talk about what the world sees and what I see. There's going to be a learning curve for the both of us, right? And so that's why it's continually evolving. But I have a cousin and he has 3 daughters and lives in Brisbane, and the middle one looks a little bit Asian, and she's the most gorgeous girl you've ever seen. Holy, she's gorgeous. All 3 of his, because his wife is Brazilian, all of his girls are just stunning. And he said that the middle one has had some issues because of the fact that she does have some Asian features, and that she's been horribly teased at school and people have said XYZ to her. So it's always going to be a learning curve. But I think what we do is take that lesson from Avenue Q, right? All of this stuff is only for now. Somebody calls you a name, it's only in that moment. It's only for now. You have to move on. You have to pick yourself up. You have to get moving. And that's a intrinsically Australian trait that I do take with me, and I take great pride in, is that I am able to sometimes, when my US form of armor is not enough, that I'm able to say to myself, right then, that's kind of all it takes. I'm like, right, okay, let's go. And I pick myself up because, at some level, racism is always going to exist. Sexism is always going to exist, but you can't let it stop you. It's just a temporary, it's only for now. It's only in that moment when people say it to you. Don't take ownership of it. Let it drop off you and move forward, because only you know what you know, and only you know how you want to proceed in your life. They can cancel Q. Absolutely, if they want to. But there's a lot of really good lessons in Q about how to get along with things. And also in Q, if you can look at it, Gary Coleman gets along with Christmas Eve, and Christmas Eve gets along with Rod. Rod is one of her besties. I think the thing is, as diverse as all those characters are, they find love in their hearts for one another. And they also find strength in acknowledging this shitty thing happened to me, but I'm still going to continue on. I still have the ability to move forward. So that's what Q means to me. Q means you can dig down deep and you can get over stuff, and you're stronger than you think you are.
Yep, I know. That's absolutely amazing. I got all these other questions there, but after that, I don't want to ruin it, but I'm going to. Sorry. A bit lighter now. That was absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to keep jumping in and give my 2 cents.
No, it's right.
Honestly, don't mean to white-splain, is the term is. I'm more white-splaining to the people who need to hear it out there.
Right. No, I understand.
Just on that, though, the whole thing about Ariel's not white, blah, 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 blah. Kids, she was never fucking white to begin with. She was painted. It was a decision.
She was a fish.
It was a choice by
She was a fish.
She was not born white. She was created white. So it doesn't matter who's playing her in the live action or on stage. Get over yourselves. It's just boring.
No, it absolutely doesn't matter. And also Seattle, which is where that production was with the Fifth Avenue Playhouse, they have a huge Asian population there. So they have a duty to represent the American scene in that particular city. So that's why Ariel was Asian.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything other than that. And it was Diane Huey. And she didn't deserve any of the slack she got.
Yeah.
I mean, the people slagging on her. First of all, actors do not cast themselves.
No.
So she got the job. As a person of color, I say good on you, because that meant she had to be 5 times better than anybody else that came through the door. And that is the truth. So they can all get over it. Ariel's a fish.
Yeah, it was literally, she was painted in the movie. Pardon my language, I keep swearing.
And she was based on Alyssa Milano. At the time, Alyssa Milano was the big get.
Yeah.
You know, she was on Who's the Boss? She's a big star. And so they had, all the animators had pictures of Alyssa Milano pinned on their desks. And you can see it in the
making of.
Yeah. It's Alyssa Milano. So in the making of, look at all the videos. Alyssa Milano's picture is up there because she was typical Disney in a person, right? She had big eyes, an expressive face, and big poofy hair. It wouldn't have mattered. If Alyssa Milano had been a person of color, then Ariel would have been a person of color.
Yeah.
But to the point, though, Alyssa Milano is Italian.
Which is Mediterranean.
Which was considered not white in America for a very long time.
And in Australia.
Yeah.
I won't use the term, but there is the W word that people throw around in it. Whilst it's a casual thing here, it's not necessarily a derogatory term used by a lot of people, but it is also used as a derogatory term by a lot of people. So
the only difference is they didn't give her dark hair because they were creating her to be showcased in the sea. So the red hair showed up better. You know, especially when she's in a cabin or whatever. You're blinded by it, and they did not want her to be blonde. So that's why. So they can all get over it.
They can, and it was defined for Ursula. Anyways, a bit lighter now. Where in the world inspires you most creatively?
I still take a lot of inspiration from New York. Even as the work has to be done and there's more work, I still see people doing the work. So New York is very much the creative center. And I enjoy living here, like, honestly.
I can't wait to go there. I really can't wait to go there. A few people along the way, especially Kay recently, have made me feel somewhat championed and believed in. Are there people in your past or even the present who have championed you and kept that motivation alive?
Yeah, I remember one time, this is going to be name droppy.
Yep.
Just be aware. I was on a text with BD Wong and David Henry Wang.
Yep.
And they were debating something with me. And then I said something. I said, I don't even know what I'm doing on this text thread because, you know, I don't have a Tony Award. And David said, I'm pretty sure you will.
Yep.
So you can stay. And I was like, oh, now, do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. But it was nice to be included. And he did do my panel at Broadway Con. And I'm indebted to him, as is every Asian American performer, because he's written a great canon of work.
Yeah. What teen idol posters were on your wall? Was it Johnny Farnham?
I was not allowed to have.
No,
I wasn't allowed to have any posters on my wall. But David Campbell is a friend of mine. I haven't seen him in a million years, but he is a friend of mine. So, like, you know, I for sure knew about everybody, you know, and like Jimmy Barnes and all that, you know. And I remember, well, if I met David's dad, I'd have to be up on the canon of work. So I went out and got every Cold Chisel album just in case it came up, but haven't met him. Yeah. But at the same time, like, know a lot about Cold Chisel, probably more than people would need to know.
Yeah. Now, at school, we studied numerous plays in English and drama class, but never a musical. Is there a musical you think should be studied and analyzed as part of the curriculum?
Ragtime.
Ragtime? Yeah.
Ragtime, yeah. It's really well done. I think Ragtime, The Color Purple, I think Cabaret, Les Miserables. Mm-hmm. I think you could make an argument for the musicals that are based on written novels and or pre-existing texts and see what the translation is into that, you know, because like Victor Hugo alone, you could do an entire course on why the story of Les Mis has lasted as long as it has and what it says about, you know, the French and the French Revolution and why it was translated so many times. And then now it's become this blockbuster musical that is never going away. Although I hesitate to say it. Maybe you could even throw in Evita because it is about a world leader that essentially took over a country and robbed it of its resources, but still remains beloved, and how that psychological dynamic happens.
Yeah. Anyways, last question.
Yeah.
When was the last time you rolled down a hill for fun and not because you slipped?
That's funny because I slipped last Sunday and I completely tossed my ankle. So I would have
no.
to say that I was still swollen and awful. Last
no.
time I rolled down a hill. You know, it's funny because, like, I know you're going to have Christiane and she'll remember this. When we were at school, they had this thing called traying where people would grab trays from the cafeteria and slide down the hill on them.
Yep.
And that might be the last time that I was like, oh, there's a hill. Because, like, I am always concerned about injuring myself to the point where I'm not able to work. Like, when I was going to go on tour with King and I remember my parents had booked a ski vacation and I got there and I was like, right, I'm not skiing. And they were like, what? And I said, well, because I'm going on tour. What if I fall and break my leg or break my arm? And they said, okay, well, what about cross country skiing? And, you know, that's very easy. Like your foot really never leaves the ground. So I was like, yeah, that's all right. Well, wouldn't you know it? Somebody wound up crashing into me and like threw me over. And I wound up like thankfully not breaking anything, but getting into trouble with my back and had to have emergency chiro and all that stuff. So, yeah, the rolling down the hill is not going to work for me.
No. But did you sue them for $1?
At least $1. At least $1. Yeah.
Shout out to Gwyneth. Goodness me. That's it. You've made it through the torture chamber in one piece.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me. It's been fun.
No, thank you. It's been an absolute honor. What an amazing story. And there was so much even just talking to you, and I knew it was the Australian citizenship, but I didn't know what the story was or anything. I thought I'm going to find out on the show, and I didn't know how involved and amazing it would be. So I feel kind of stupid there, but wow, I was absolutely thrilled.
No, it's, you know, the Chinese Australians have not had their history put into the history books in any discernible way over there, and like maybe one or two mentions, but as somebody whose family has been there for multiple generations, it is a source of pride. And I'm actually working, I wrote this short film which Kate directed, which wound up through her Voices in Women project going to like 45 film festivals, including Cannes. They showed it at the Australian consulate here in New York, and everybody literally came up, including the current ambassador, and was like, you must make this. It's too big a story to not make. So that's what I'm in the process of, turning it into a screenplay.
Oh, wow.
I've had a first pass of it and I'm kind of halfway through the second draft. I got some notes and I'm taking them, and like, hopefully, you know, in the future we'll see it on Netflix Australia or something like that. So just like accessible. I don't even care if it makes money. I just would like the history of Asian people in Australia to be told from the perspective of Asian people in Australia, especially the ones who've been there for quite a while. Yeah. So there you go.
As long as, like, my dad's family, like, well, my dad, he moved over here from England in 1949 or something, but my mum's family were already here, but I couldn't tell you how long. So your family were probably here a lot longer than mine.
1870.
You know, and then you look at people's attitudes today.
I know. We are very mixed, our family, just like have always had intermarriage and so forth. And so I have cousins that are blonde haired and green eyed. And then I have me. And then I have cousins that look more Chinese than me. I have one cousin, he won't take the public transport anymore because of how much verbal abuse he's gotten on the buses. And I remember when he told me that, I was just devastated for him. Lovely guy. And he doesn't sound non-Australian. He's fully Australian. He's Aussie, surfy like thing. And just to know that he doesn't feel safe taking public transport is quite you know, no matter how far we come, we still have further to go.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Don't know how we're going to fix it, but anyway, just before I go, where can people find you on the social medias? People
can find me on Instagram. It's at Erin Quill.
Yep.
And my Broadway Con panels are up there and pinned. So if anybody wants to see the panels I hosted at Broadway Con, feel free. And then I have an official Erin Quill Facebook page because that was hot several years ago and I just haven't taken it down. So there you go.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, that's it from us. Check below for all links and details. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we shall see you next time. Uru! Awesome.
Bye!
Like quicksand!
That piece of shit.